On December 16, 1944 at 30 a.m. one engineer's quick thinking saved his entire unit. He fixed a jammed machine gun in 30 seconds. The Germans were closing in and the Americans were running out of ammo. The wrong move meant capture or death. Here's what really happened during the Battle of the Bulge. The engineer grabs his toolbox. His hands are shaking. The countdown begins. As he drops to one knee beside the jammed machine gun, the engineer's hands move with a speed and precision that belies the tremors that had initially beset them. His fingers dance across the metal, releasing the catch and sliding the cover plate off to reveal the stuck bolt. The sound of German boots crunching through the snow grows louder, and the engineer can feel the weight of his comrades' eyes on him, their lives hanging in the balance. He takes a deep breath, the cold air burning his lungs, and focuses on the task at hand. 20 seconds have passed, and the engineer's hands are moving swiftly, his training kicking in. He works the bolt back and forth, trying to dislodge the casing that has become stuck. Sweat drips down his face, despite the freezing temperatures, and his heart pounds in his chest. The Germans are getting closer, their voices rising in a crescendo of shouted orders and encouragement. Suddenly, the bolt gives, and the engineer yanks it free, the casing flying out of the gun. He quickly reloads, his fingers fumbling slightly as he slammed the new belt into place. The machine gun roars back to life, spitting out a stream of bullets that rip into the approaching German troops. The engineer's comrades join in, firing their rifles and adding to the cacophony of sound that fills the forest. The Germans hesitate, momentarily stunned by the ferocity of the American response. The engineer takes advantage of the reprieve to scan their surroundings, his eyes darting back and forth as he searches for any sign of weakness in the enemy lines. That's when he sees it, a gap in the trees, just large enough for a small group of men to slip through. He grabs the arm of the nearest soldier, a young private who looks like he's about to pass out from fear. "We need to fall back," the engineer shouts above the din of battle. "We can't hold this position." The private nods, still looking shell-shocked, and the engineer starts to pull him towards the gap. The other Americans follow, firing as they go, trying to lay down a suppressive fire to keep the Germans pinned down. As they move, the engineer keeps a watchful eye on the trees, waiting for the inevitable counterattack. But then, something unexpected happened. The Germans won't give up easily, not now that they've got the Americans on the run. He can feel it in his bones, a sense of foreboding that grows with every step. They're not out of this yet, not by a long shot. The forest seems to grow denser, the trees closing in around them like sentinels. The engineer's heart is racing now, his breath coming in short gasps. He stumbles, his foot catching on a hidden root, and almost falls. The private grabs his arm, helping him up, and they keep moving, their senses on high alert. Suddenly, a burst of machine gun fire cuts through the trees, sending splinters flying everywhere. The Americans hit the ground, seeking cover behind whatever they can find. The engineer peers around the trunk of a nearby tree, trying to locate the source of the fire. That's when he sees them, a group of German soldiers, armed to the teeth and looking like they mean business. The engineer's mind goes into overdrive as he assesses their situation. They can't stay here, not with the Germans closing in. They need to keep moving, to find a way out of this forest before it's too late. He looks around, trying to get his bearings, and that's when he spots it, a small clearing up ahead, partially hidden by the trees. It looks like it might be their only chance. Without hesitation, the engineer signals to the others, gesturing towards the clearing. They nod, understanding, and start to crawl forward, keeping low to the ground. The Germans are still firing, trying to pin them down, but the Americans manage to avoid the worst of it, using the trees for cover. As they reach the edge of the clearing, the engineer pauses, scanning the surrounding area. It's a small, frozen lake, surrounded by a tangle of trees and underbrush. The surface of the lake is smooth and unbroken, a perfect sheet of white that stretches out before them. The engineer's heart skips a beat as he realizes the implications. If they can make it across the lake, they might just be able to escape. But as he looks out across the frozen expanse, he can't shake the feeling that they're being watched, that unblinking eyes are trained on them from the trees. The engineer's skin crawls, and he knows that they need to move, and fast, if they're going to get out of this alive. He takes a deep breath, steeling himself for what's to come, and gestures to the others. Let's go, he says, his voice low and urgent. We need to get across the lake, now. The Americans nod, their faces set with determination, and start to move out onto the frozen surface. What came next would change everything. The engineer follows, his eyes scanning the trees, waiting for the other shoe to drop. They're not safe yet, not by a long shot. The Germans could be anywhere, waiting to pounce. The engineer's senses are on high alert, his heart pounding in his chest, as they make their way across the lake. The ice creaks and groans beneath their feet, the sound echoing through the stillness like a death knell. The engineer's skin is crawling, his nerves stretched to the breaking point. He knows that they can't stay here, not out in the open like this. They need to find cover, and fast, before the Germans spot them. As they reach the middle of the lake, the engineer catches sight of something that makes his blood run cold. A line of German troops, armed and ready, emerging from the trees on the far side of the lake. They're not going to make it, not without a fight. The engineer's mind goes into overdrive, racing with possibilities, as he tries to come up with a plan. The Americans are exposed, out in the open with no cover. They can't take on the Germans in a straight-up fight, not out here. The engineer's eyes dart back and forth, searching for any sign of weakness, any way to gain an advantage. That's when he spots it, a small island in the middle of the lake, partially hidden by a screen of trees. Without hesitation, the engineer signals to the others, gesturing towards the island. They nod, understanding, and start to make their way towards it. The Germans are closing in, their rifles at the ready, but the Americans manage to stay ahead of them, using the island as cover. As they reach the trees, the engineer lets out a sigh of relief. They've made it, at least for the moment. But he knows that they can't stay here, not for long. The Germans will be back, and next time, they won't be so easy to shake. The engineer's mind is racing, trying to come up with a plan, as he looks around at his comrades. They're all exhausted, their faces drawn and pale. They've been on the go for hours, with no rest and no food. The engineer knows that they can't keep this up, not for much longer. They need to find a way out of this forest, and fast, before they're all killed or captured. As he looks around, the engineer spots something that gives him an idea. A small cabin, partially hidden by the trees, smoke drifting lazily from the chimney. It's a risk, but it might just be their only chance. The shocking truth was about to surface. The engineer signals to the others, gesturing towards the cabin. They nod, understanding, and start to make their way towards it. As they approach the cabin, the engineer can feel his heart pounding in his chest. What will they find inside? Will it be a haven, or a trap? He pushes open the door, his rifle at the ready, and steps inside. The cabin is warm and cozy, a fire crackling in the hearth. But it's not empty. An old man sits in a chair, his eyes fixed on the engineer. He's dressed in a pair of worn overalls, a woolen hat pulled down over his head. The engineer's first instinct is to trust him, but he knows that he can't be too careful. Not out here, not in the middle of a war zone. Who are you? The engineer asks, his voice firm but polite. The old man looks up at him, his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. I'm a friend, he says, his voice low and gravelly. At least, I think I am. My name is Pierre, and I've been living in these woods for years. The engineer's eyes narrow, his mind racing with possibilities. Can they trust this old man, or is he just a cleverly disguised enemy agent? He looks around the cabin, taking in the simple furnishings and the smell of cooking food. It's a risk, but it might just be worth it. What do you know about the Germans? The engineer asks, his voice still cautious. Pierre leans forward, his eyes glinting with a hint of excitement. I know they're everywhere, he says. They've been combing the woods, looking for anyone who might be hiding. But I also know a way out, a way to get you safely behind American lines. The engineer's heart skips a beat as he hears the old man's words. A way out, a way to escape. It's what they've been searching for, what they've been fighting for. He looks at Pierre, his eyes locked on the old man's face. Tell me more, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. Pierre nods, a small smile playing on his lips. I can take you to a secret path, he says. It's hidden deep in the woods, but it will take you safely behind American lines. You'll have to be careful, though. The Germans are patrolling the area, and they won't hesitate to shoot anyone they find. The engineer's mind is racing, weighing the risks and benefits. It's a gamble, but it might just be their only chance. He looks at his comrades, seeing the exhaustion and fear etched on their faces. No one could have predicted what happened next. "Let's do it," he says, his voice firm. "We'll follow Pierre, and see where it takes us." The old man nods, a look of satisfaction on his face. "I'll take you to the path," he says. "But you have to promise me one thing. You have to promise me that you'll be careful, that you'll watch each other's backs." The engineer nods, his eyes locked on Pierre's face. "We'll be careful," he says. "We'll watch each other's backs, and we'll make it out alive." Pierre nods, a small smile playing on his lips. "I think you will," he says. "I think you've got a good chance of making it out alive. But you have to be careful, you have to be smart. The Germans won't give up easily, and they'll stop at nothing to capture or kill you." The engineer's heart is pounding in his chest as he listens to Pierre's words. He knows that the old man is right, that they have to be careful if they want to survive. He looks at his comrades, seeing the determination etched on their faces. "We'll be careful," he says. "We'll make it out alive, or we'll die trying." Pierre nods, a look of approval on his face. "I think you will," he says. "I think you've got what it takes to make it out alive. Now, let's get moving. We've got a long way to go, and not a lot of time to waste." The engineer nods, his heart pounding in his chest. He knows that they're taking a risk, that they're putting their lives in the hands of a stranger. But he also knows that they have no other choice, that they have to try if they want to survive. As they follow Pierre out of the cabin, the engineer can't shake the feeling that they're being watched, that unblinking eyes are trained on them from the trees. He knows that they're not safe yet, that they've still got a long way to go before they can rest easy. But he also knows that they've got a chance to make it out alive. And with Pierre's help, they might just be able to do it. The engineer's heart is pounding in his chest as he follows Pierre into the unknown, his senses on high alert as they make their way deeper into the woods. As they walk, the trees seem to close in around them, casting deep shadows that make it difficult to see. Pierre leads the way, his eyes fixed on some point ahead as he navigates the dense underbrush with ease. The engineer follows closely behind, his comrades spread out behind him in a loose formation. At this critical moment, a fatal mistake occurred. They move quietly, their boots crunching on the dry leaves and twigs that carpet the forest floor. The engineer's senses are on high alert, his ears straining to pick up any sign of danger. He knows that the Germans could be anywhere, hiding behind a tree or lurking in a clearing. He glances around, his eyes scanning the trees for any sign of movement. Pierre stops suddenly, his hand raised in a warning gesture. The engineer freezes, his heart pounding in his chest. "What is it?" he whispers, his eyes locked on Pierre's face. Pierre doesn't respond, his eyes fixed on something ahead. The engineer follows his gaze, his eyes straining to see what has caught the old man's attention. And then he sees it, a flash of movement, a glimpse of gray uniform through the trees. The engineer's heart skips a beat as he realizes that they are not alone. The Germans are out there, watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. Pierre's eyes meet the engineer's, a look of warning in their depths. "Stay close," he whispers, his voice barely audible. "We need to get out of here, now." The engineer nods, his mind racing with possibilities. They can't stay here, not with the Germans so close. They need to keep moving, to find a way out of the woods before it's too late. He glances at his comrades, seeing the fear etched on their faces. They know that they are in grave danger, that one wrong move could mean capture or death. The engineer takes a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. He knows that they have to keep moving, to trust Pierre and follow him through the woods. He nods, his eyes locked on Pierre's face. "Let's go," he whispers, his voice barely audible. Pierre nods, his eyes glinting with a hint of determination. "Stay close," he repeats, his voice low and urgent. "We're not out of this yet." And with that, they move forward, their senses on high alert as they navigate the treacherous landscape. The engineer's heart is pounding in his chest, his mind racing with possibilities. They are taking a risk, a huge risk, but it's one they have to take. They have to trust Pierre, and follow him through the woods. The alternative is too terrible to contemplate: capture, torture, death. The engineer pushes the thoughts aside, his eyes fixed on Pierre's back. He knows that they have to keep moving, to find a way out of the woods before it's too late. And so they walk, their senses on high alert, their hearts pounding in their chests. They are walking into the unknown, into a world of danger and uncertainty. But they have no choice, not if they want to survive.